Hi, I'm Seraphim from the Tesla Quartet, and I'm joined by Adam Maalouf, one of 12 composers who have written a wonderful piece for our Alternating Currents commissioning project. Thank you so much, Adam, for joining us, and thank you for writing such an awesome piece for us.
Thank you, Seraphim, and thank you everyone in the Tesla Quartet for making this cool project possible right now.
I want to ask you, how have you been influenced by Beethoven in writing this work, since it was supposed to be a variation on the Beethoven theme?
Well, I studied Beethoven as a timpanist, and playing, these really main arrival points on timpani that's really one of the main roles of the instrument. And, so kind of redefining the piece in a way that rhythmically would lead energetically to these arrival points, but then combining that concept with this Arabic concept, which was not very much Beethoven influence, but all of the harmonies and basic melodic structure of the piece remains in what Beethoven wrote.
That's awesome. And you have used a very interesting rhythmical pattern, which is 1 2 3 1 2 1 2 1 2 3, which was very exciting. Would you mind talking about where the origin of this rhythmic pattern was, how you decided to sort of superimpose it on Beethoven?
Yeah. Well, the rhythm is called Samai, and the Samai is a 10-beat rhythm from Arabic classical music.
Okay.
And it's a way of playing, very ornamented, and usually kind of a slower tempo piece. But it felt like the tempo of the Andante would be a nice pair to kind of because I wanted to transpose the Beethoven into meter that was of this Arabic origin, either 7 or 10 beats, and I felt that this kind of symmetrical rhythm lent itself nicely with the melody provided by Beethoven.
Okay, that's amazing. So you touched a little bit on your percussion experience, and I know that you are playing an instrument called pantam. Am I pronouncing it correctly?
Yeah.
So would you mind talking about it and sort of what is it like?
Of course, yeah. The instrument is an instrument by many names. Originally, it was called the hung, and it was invented in Switzerland in year 2000. It's a steel pan instrument that, because of the design of the note, it actually evokes a sound wave that is similar to that of a string instrument.
Yes.
And that's due to the way that they design the harmonics of each note to be this kind of oval shape, so that you have the harmonics, the octave and the fifth within each pure tone.
Sure.
And the name, the pantam, is a name that was given to it because of its origin, half steel pan and half guttam, the clay pot drum from India.
Speaking of India, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think after you were done with school, you moved to India for a while to sort of explore that side of the world, and I'm very curious of how did it affect you as a composer and as a musician?
Yeah, well, I didn't move to India. I traveled there for a 2-month period to study with Anindo Chatterjee, and Anindo is a fantastic tabla player in India who has a following of many thousands of students internationally all around the world that follow his playing and have learned from him.
Yeah.
And but he comes to New York, and that's actually where I met him when I was living in New York after music school, and was studying tabla, found him as a teacher. And then when he went back to India in January, then a lot of his students would meet him in India, because that's when the music festival season takes place. In January, like the classical music festival. So they have these all-night concerts and programming from 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. It's called the Dover Lane Music Conference, and it's just all night, 4 nights in a row, Indian classical music. And so I don't feel like I really integrated so much of Indian concept into this piece, except rather than just the idea of kind of having an open mind and being able to bridge styles in a way that maybe is not adhering to something that's been done before, is something that's really established or recognized.
Yeah, I think that's definitely was something that we have picked up, and absolutely loved is this sort of synthesis of, Western, let's just call it harmonic language, and also something from outside of that very rigid, structured sort of tonal language that we're used to with classical music. And I wanted to ask you about this because as someone like me, and also my quartet colleagues are definitely sharing in that, somebody who always likes to sort of looking out and sort of exploring, looking beyond what's considered to be traditional repertoire. I'm always curious, how does someone like you, who sort of in a way has one leg in one and one leg in another, how does one actually combine these two?
Well, I don't know if I've done this successfully, but I think that, just having kind of a genuine interest in multiple things, if something speaks to you, then kind of research and find out more, and find the best people that do that, and learn from them. And I think that that's kind of like what I've sought in the teachers that I've looked for in music, is teachers that have had their own original ideas, but then have also really pursued them, kind of. And then as far as the Eastern thing, I think that there's many different ways of doing it, and there's this marimba piece called the Khan Variations.
Okay.
And it's this classical piece of literature that melds like kind of atonal 12-tone composition with what he thought was his idea of like rhythmic cycles, and like how the rhythm were integrated based on a singer from Pakistan. So that was like the concept behind the piece. So it's like, because there was a concept there, he really the combination, it came out with a totally unique result. So there isn't going to be really one result here. Every artist is going to have different variations when you're creating kind of like a fusion. Well, who I think does this kind of, who I think does this really well is Yo-Yo Ma.
Okay, great. Yeah, of course.
A lot of
the Silk Road Ensemble.
The Silk Road, but then even what he's continued to do with Goat Rodeo, it's like Appalachian bluegrass meets this kind of like contemporary or classical vibe, and they're playing authentic in a way that's very authentic for them. I don't feel like Yo-Yo Ma is trying to play outside of who he is as a player, or his influences, but also he has a very open mind, and just because you don't specialize in something doesn't mean that you can't learn about it or have interest in it. And some people don't think that that's how it should be, but that's how I've always tried to be. It's just, if you have an interest, you can learn more about it. It doesn't mean that you're sacrificing musicality or professionalism in your field as a musician if it's outside of your realm of what you were taught.
I love that. That's great and very inspiring, and of course yourself being a wonderful example of that. Speaking of which, what is next for you? Where do people who have listened to your work and absolutely loved it, where do they go to learn more about you, or maybe perhaps you can tease a little bit what's sort of in the works?
Well, I've been in the process of releasing this East-West collaboration called the East River Sessions. And it's a bridge of classical Arabic music with the handpan, as well as classical Indian music with the handpan. So there's kind of two parts to the album, and almost in similar casts. I had one South Indian violinist on the Indian pieces, and then I had a Jordanian violinist, Laith, who's this violinist that I showed you in our initial interview. And then we had a tabla player from India for the Indian pieces, and a Arabic percussionist for the Arabic piece. And kind of like I was drawing these parallels and similarities, but also kind of the way that I play is as a jazz drummer, really, thinking about like playing the instrument in a way that is free, much more free of, I shouldn't say totally free, but is much more free of kind of a preconceived idea of what should be happening. But so the way of playing is each player is kind of embodying a new way of approaching their instrument, bridging it with handpan, bridging the violin with handpan, and they're having to adapt the way that they play as well. So I'm releasing the videos from that, and it's a studio album that'll be uploaded soon. But
Yeah.
honestly, COVID kind of like threw things for a crazy turn, and we're all really adapting. I think doing a lot of live streaming performances.
Yeah.
I've been working on a solo act for a number of years, so this has been actually a great time to do a bunch of solo performances from my home, and live streaming workshops, and also taking a bunch of workshops and taking advantage of the great artists that are now turning to live streaming because they want to be able to play and interact, and that's how we get inspiration. And
that sounds great. Well, is there anything that I haven't asked you yet that you want to be asked? Is there anything you want to add? Maybe something you feel will add to the enjoyment of your piece?
Yeah, well, it's just taking this kind of like feeling of groove that there would be in the piece that is already in the piece. It's very kind of slow and light butterfly, and kind of like it adding this rhythm kind of brings a little more like rhythmic swing to it. You might appreciate it, or it might not be exactly what the variation needs, but I think it was worth the attempt of writing it out and like kind of getting a feel for transposing the piece into this rhythm.
Definitely, and we absolutely loved working on it, and we thank you so much for responding to that call and delivering this amazing piece, and I'm sure our audience will absolutely love it. Thank you, Adam, for joining me for this little interview, and we wish you all the best, and I'm sure our audience will be following you and all the great things you're about to do.
Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me. Best of luck. And can't wait to follow you guys in the future as well, and see how what comes next from Tesla Quartet. And also, I want to hear all the variations.
That's true. That's true. Yeah, we have awesome collection. Okay. All right. Thanks, Adam.
Okay. Thank you.
Bye.